وأن الله ربي وربكم فاعبدوه هذا صراط مستقيم وإن الله ربي وربكم فاعبدوه هذا صراط مستقيم.
حكم من يدعي الإسلام لفظا وهو مناقض للإسلام معنى. The judgment of the one who claims Islam verbally but nullifies Islam in meaning. There are many factions that have contradicted Islam in meaning, even if they are attributed to Islam by their saying the two shahadas. I testify that no one is God except Allah, and I testify that Muhammad is the messenger of Allah. And even if they are attributed to or affiliated with Islam by their praying and their fasting, because they have contradicted the two testifications of faith by believing what negates them in various ways, about rules of blasphemy, different ways of categorizing blasphemy, whether they compared God to the creations, or they committed atheism, or they contradicted the religion, or other ways. They have surely gone out of the monotheism by their worshiping other than Allah, by their worship of other than Allah. By their worship of other than Allah. Thus, they are blasphemers. They are not Muslims, despite their being affiliated with Islam and despite their pronouncing the Shahada. Like those who believe in the godhood of Ali ibn Abi Talib, or Al-Khadir, who believe in the godhood of Al-Khadir, or Al-Hakim bi Amrillah, and others. And any group that believed in the godhood of a human being is not even counted among the 73 groups that are mentioned in the hadith. Likewise is anything that has the judgment of that, whether a saying or doing. It's blasphemy. The judgment of whoever rejects the two testifications of faith is the definitive charge with blasphemy. The Arabic word here, yajhad al-juhud, is denial with knowledge. It was translated here as rejects. It is denial with knowledge, denial with knowledge. His judgment is a definitive charge with blasphemy. His destination will be hell if he dies like that, everlastingly abiding in it forever and ever. The everlasting torture in the hereafter will not be cut off from him, and he shall not be the one who gets out of hell. That statement, he shall not be the one who gets out of hell, it implies what? Who knows? What's the hint there in that statement? The way it's worded like that. What's the hint there? He shall not be the one who gets out of hell. What's the hint there? Yes, that someone else will. Not him, someone else. That's correct. Barakallahu feek. So that's how that is. That's how that Arabic goes there. وَمَا هُوَ بِخَارِجٍ مِّنَ النَّارِ. So if someone translates for you Sirat, he says it not like that, you might say, and he's not getting out of hell. So he missed it. He missed something. Whoever performs the greatest of Allah's rights by confirming his oneness, exalted is he, i.e., by leaving out associating anything with him, and by having faith in his messenger, sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Anyone like that will not dwell in hellfire forever, even if he does enter it because of his sins. So that's a believer, a sinful believer. His fate in the end, no matter what the situation, is exiting hell and entering paradise after receiving the torture he deserves if Allah does not forgive him. If Allah does not forgive him means if Allah does not forgive him before he receives all the torture he deserves. So the sinful Muslims, some of them will be forgiven before any torture, yani granted paradise without any torture, though they deserve it. And some of them will be tortured and then forgiven before all of the torture they deserve. If Allah doesn't forgive him, he will be in hell for as long as he deserves. The Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, يخرج من النار من قال لا إله إلا الله وفي قلبه وزن ذرة من إيمان. Anyone who says there is no God except Allah is getting out of hell, as long as he has a small ant's weight of faith in his heart. This was narrated by Al-Bukhari. As for the one who adhered to God's monotheism, exalted is he, and he refrained from disobeying Allah and fulfilled his commands. So he went further than just believing. He also was obedient concerning what is less than faith. He was also obedient concerning what is less than faith. And he avoided the haram. He will enter paradise without torture, where the everlasting and ongoing luxuries are. So then, what are we saying here? That if you die as a kafir, of course that means an accountable kafir, you shall be in hell forever. You will never escape. If you die as a Muslim, that alone does not guarantee escaping hell altogether. It only guarantees escaping hell eventually. Dying as a Muslim guarantees escaping hell eventually. And dying as a pious Muslim will protect you from entering hell altogether. So what protects from entering hell altogether is piety, which is unachievable while on a state of blasphemy. This is proven by the Qudsi hadith conveyed by Abu Hurairah. Qudsi hadith, we didn't explain that last time. Qudsi hadith meaning a hadith in which the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam says, Allah said, without it being from the Quran. And therefore the hadith Qudsi is counted as Kalamullah. The revealed books is Kalamullah. And the hadith Qudsi is Kalamullah, the speech of Allah. This is proven by the Qudsi hadith conveyed by Abu Hurairah. The Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, قال الله عز وجل أعددت لعبادي الصالحين ما لا عين رأت ولا أذن سمعت ولا خطر على قلب بشر. Here you have أعددت. This second dal merges into the ta. Don't say أعددت, rather put a shadda on the ta and say أعددت. Allah, the mighty and great, said, I have prepared for my pious slaves what no eye has seen, what no ear has heard, and what never occurred to the heart of any human, or what has never crossed anyone's mind is the meaning. And what has never crossed anyone's mind. So that's a hadith Qudsi that proves that paradise has in it what is unknown to any creature. That's for the awliya. Abu Hurairah continued to say, recite if you want, Yani, he brought an ayah that it has a meaning like the Hadith Qudsi. Is there an ayah from the Quran that means like this Hadith Qudsi? Yes, he said, recite if you want the saying of Allah the Exalted, فَلَا تَعْلَمُ نَفْسٌ مَا أُخْفِيَ لَهُم مِّن قُرَّةِ أَعْيُنٍ جَزَاءً بِمَا كَانُوا يَعْمَلُونَ. No soul knows what is hidden for them of pleasurable things as compensation for what they used to do. Al-Bukhari narrated that in his Sahih. Bayanu aqsamil kufr, clarification of the divisions of blasphemy. Know, my Muslim brother, that there are creeds, doings, and sayings that invalidate the two testifications of faith and make one fall into blasphemy. For blasphemy is of three types. You know, for here means because. Because. For blasphemy is of three types: the blasphemous creed, the blasphemous act, and the blasphemous expression. That is by the consensus of the four schools. Did he say that's by consensus and stop there? He did not. So there he qualified that statement. He said that's the consensus of the four schools. Like An-Nawawi and Ibn al-Muqri of the Shafi'is, Ibn Abidin of the Hanafis, Al-Buhuti of the Hanabila, Shaykh Muhammad al-Laysh of the Malikis, and others. So whoever wants, let him look in those books for reference so that he can be sure and see. People even used to say that Shaykh Abdullah made up this categorization of blasphemy. You know, one of the things that by which we believed in Shaykh Abdullah being the renovator of this time is that some of the followers of Shaykh Abdullah in different cities, they were the ones who knew about these things and other people didn't know. Other Muslims, they didn't know about those things. And now it became more known and people have accepted it as common knowledge. I remember in Philadelphia, AICP was the only place doing Mawlid. Wallahi al-Azim. And AICP would do Mawlid and the Wahhabis would be on the side of the road saying, shirk, shirk. Nobody else in the city was pumping Mawlid. And you probably wouldn't even find people pumping madhabs. Now you find a lot of people doing those things. Looks like the knowledge spread. Similarly, other than the scholars of the four schools among the past mujtahids, like Al-Awza'i mentioned that. He was a mujtahid. He had a school that was practiced for 200 years. His madhab was practiced, after which his followers died out. The blasphemous conviction. Its place is the heart. Examples are denying one of the attributes of Allah, the Exalted, that are necessary for him by consensus, such as his existence, his being powerful, hearing, and seeing, which that's atheism. All of that. Denying his existence, that's a clear atheism. Denying his power, hearing, or seeing, that's indirect atheism, because it leads to atheism. So here, don't be confused about accusing those people like Mu'tazila who do that with being atheists. It's a proper accusation. So someone might say, but they're not atheists. They don't say God doesn't exist. So you're mislabeling them. The answer to that is that it's true they don't say that, but we're not mislabeling them. We're labeling them as per the implications. Just like the God comparers we call them mushabbiha, don't we? Don't we say you're a mushrik? We say, you saying Allah is in a place, you're a mushrik. So did he say for himself that he's a mushrik? No. So why are we saying that? We're labeling him by the implication of what he says. So like we call that one a mushrik, pagan, although he doesn't affirm that for himself, and he would even deny it and say, I'm not a pagan. We call those atheists, although they don't affirm that for themselves, and they would even deny it because of the implications. It is also blasphemy to believe that Allah is a light with the meaning of an illumination, or that he is a spirit or a soul. Spirit and soul mean the same thing here. Shaykh Abdullah Al-Harariyy said, whoever believes that Allah fills heavens and earth, or that he is a body sitting above the arsh, then he is a blasphemer, even if he claimed that he was a Muslim. The blasphemous action is like throwing a book of the Quran in the trash. Ibn Abidin said, even if he did not intend sacrilege, because his doing itself is an indication of sacrilege. That's an important statement there. He's saying the mere act is belittling. So when he says after that, I didn't intend to belittle the Quran, that's not going to help him, because he did belittle the Quran. It is also blasphemy to throw religious papers in the trash, or any paper that has one of the names of Allah the Exalted as his name, not as another name, not as a word referring to something else, like As-Salam or An-Nur. If that's in reference to Allah, then you cannot throw it in the trash. Or any paper that has one of the names of Allah the Exalted while knowing of the presence of that name on it. Same thing if it's the name of a prophet, yani that name refers to a prophet, not to someone who is the namesake of a prophet. You know what's a namesake? Namesake means someone who has your name. Also the name Islam, the names of angels. Furthermore, whoever hangs the symbols of blasphemy on himself without a necessity, an example I learned is like he came to a checkpoint. If they discover he's a Muslim, they'll kill him. So he put a cross around his neck so he could walk past the checkpoint. I learned that example. If it were with the intention of seeking blessings, that's blasphemy. Or if it were with the intention of glorification, glorifying that symbol or that blasphemy, that's blasphemy. Or out of legitimating it, deeming it lawful, then he would be an apostate. So then what's the judgment of wearing a religious symbol? Haram. Now, is that absolute? I haven't heard meaning. Any and every symbol of blasphemy is only haram, it's never kufr. I did learn that if the cross has a little man on it, sometimes they have a cross without a man on it, and sometimes they have a cross with a man on it. I learned that if it has a man on it, it's kufr. If it doesn't have a man on it, it's haram. You also want to be mindful about wearing flags of some nations, in particular some European nations, because the cross on their flags is actually a Christian cross. You might have thought it was just a design, but no, it's not just a design there. There's some other things too. Some Muslims aren't careful there. Like there's some what some might call African symbols. That's a very broad word there, but some things you recognize them. Like one looks like a cross, but it has a hoop on the top. And some other things like that, you find people wearing necklaces of such things. Or there's the yin and yang, that it's like the circle with the squiggly line in the middle, and one side is white and one side is black. This is not Islamic. That has roots in other religions. So you want to be mindful of all those things. Don't be attached to the dunya so that you care about wearing some necklace on your neck and other things. I remind myself, remember being questioned on Judgment Day. Whatever you do, whatever you say, remember being questioned about it on Judgment Day. You do that, then a lot of times you're going to not do something. If you ask yourself, do I want to be questioned about this on Judgment Day? Then so many times you're going to say no, so you're going to not do it. Other times you're going to say no and still do it because you were too weak to stop, but at least that helps. The blasphemous saying is like insulting Allah, the Exalted. We seek refuge with Allah from blasphemy by saying, "O daughter of your Lord," or "O son of God." Blasphemy will occur in this case even if the person did not believe that Allah has a daughter or son. If a Muslim calls another Muslim by saying, "O blasphemer," without any ta'wil, the speaker blasphemes, because he has named Islam blasphemy. Without any ta'wil, an explanation of the statement that saves him from falling into blasphemy, such as meaning by saying, "Oh kafir, you act like a blasphemer," or that this Muslim committed an enormous sin, which the speaker thought was blasphemy. So he had a mistake and he said, "You kafir," for a major sin that he committed. That's his ta'wil. He called that Muslim a kafir unrightfully, but he had a ta'wil, which was his misunderstanding the rule, thinking that a major sin is blasphemy, or was that he meant you act like a blasphemer. That's his ta'wil. So in these cases, he doesn't commit blasphemy for calling the Muslim a blasphemer. Here, take an important benefit. Something that's called tashbihun baligh. Tashbih baligh, it means a metaphor. Metaphor means to compare without an expression of comparison. To compare without an expression of comparison. An expression of comparison is like saying like or as. So that's like saying Zaid is a lion instead of like a lion, just is a lion. So what's that? Is it a lie? It's not a lie unless he meant it literally. Rather, that's a metaphor. So someone says to you, "You lion," or "You sheep." That's one that's used today, isn't it? A lot of sheeple out there. "You sheep," "You pig," "You ant," "You kafir." What does he mean there? He means you act like a kafir. Or someone says to a woman, "You angel." What's that mean there? They mean you are beautiful like an angel. They're not saying she's really an angel. So don't judge that person as a kafir here. If a Muslim calls another Muslim by saying, "Oh blasphemer," without any ta'wil, the speaker blasphemes because he has named Islam blasphemy. Also blasphemes whoever says to the Muslim, "Oh Jew," or the likes of such expressions with the intention that he's not a Muslim. Also here, he might say, "Oh Jew," he means Oh, you who used to be a Jew. That's haram. That's haram. It's not blasphemy though. Because you might call someone by the name of what he used to be. Like a soldier. He's retired now. Isn't it that someone still might call him soldier or officer or sergeant? Hey, Sarge. He's retired. People still calling him Sarge. But if a Muslim was a sinner and his sin had a name, yani, such a sinner has a name, and then he repented from that sin, it's haram to call him by the name of who commits that sin. So you don't say to that Muslim who repented, hey, crackhead. He's not a crackhead anymore. May Allah protect us. So also blasphemes whoever says to the Muslim, oh Jew, or the likes of such expressions, with the intention that he's not a Muslim. That's why Shaykh says here, with the intention that, because there is a way in language that someone would do this. So since the language accommodates like that, then we're not going to say it's explicit blasphemy. We're going to say, now we need to see what is his intention. With the intention that he is not a Muslim. However, if he intended that he resembles the Jews in his behavior, then he does not blaspheme. Or he intends that he's the one who used to be a Jew, then he does not blaspheme. If a person said to his wife, you are more beloved to me than Allah, he blasphemes, because that's explicit. But if he said to her, I worship you, that's blasphemy also. Really, that's explicit. So if he said to her, I worship you, while understanding from it the worship which is specific to Allah, the Exalted, he blasphemes. Here, this is an important point, of course. Here. While understanding from it the worship which is specific to Allah, the Exalted. What does that mean? It means while he understands the real meaning. He knows what it really means and he uses it anyway, even if he claimed that he's using it for another meaning. This is gray area for some Muslims, because when someone doesn't understand this case here, those are the same ones, the ones who don't understand this case are the same ones that if they heard someone say, he's a god at that, he's a god in acting, he's a god in acting, he's a god of sports, of football or basketball, then they get confused here and say, oh, is it blasphemy? He meant he's really good at it. Those ones got confused there instead of knowing that that's blasphemy. What's like that? Pimp. What if someone said, Prophet Muhammad is a pimp? What are you going to say? You're going to get confused there? Don't get confused there. You say, that's kufr. And then the confused one, though, he's going to say, but what if somebody meant a good thing? Means he's really cool. This is blasphemy. What makes it more confusing is that if you look in the dictionary, sometimes you'll find those meanings that we're not accepting. These meanings that we're rejecting, and we're still confirming the rule of blasphemy. Someone's going to say, but I looked in the dictionary under the word God, and I found there it means so many things. So that's a problem. That's a weakness in language. It's not enough for a person to be speaking a language. Just speaking the language doesn't make him an expert in the language. And even if he speaks the language and he looks in the dictionary too, that still in so many cases is not enough. A person recently asked me, what if someone called another one a bastard and he means to insult him? Is it a case, an explicit case of qadhf, accusing someone of fornication? Is that an explicit case of qadhf, accusing someone of fornication? Because bastard means you're born out of wedlock, so that means your mother is fornicator or an adulteress. If you call someone a bastard, you're basically saying his mother's an adulteress. I told him that's qadhf. And then we went through the same stuff here. It's, but I looked in the dictionary and blah, blah, blah. People, they use it just for mere insult. That's a qadhf. Don't you know what does that word mean? If a person said to another, may Allah be unjust to you as you have been unjust to me, the speaker blasphemes because he attributed injustice to Allah the Exalted. That's explicit blasphemy. However, if he understood from the meaning of may he be unjust to you, may he avenge me, that's what he thinks it means at the moment he says it, then we do not charge him with blasphemy, but we forbid him from saying that. So what do we have here? We have here a case of a person who doesn't understand what he's saying. Really, that's blasphemy if he says, may Allah be unjust to you as you have been unjust to me. That's blasphemy. That's clear, explicit, blatant blasphemy. But some people, because of how weak they are in their own language that they speak, they might say something like that and they think it means, may Allah avenge me. The whole statement. May Allah be unjust to you as you have been unjust to me. He thinks that means, may Allah avenge me. So that's your simple layman who's not sharp. So what are you going to say to him? Tell him you can't say that. That's blasphemy because it means that Allah is unjust. So what he's going to say? He might say, no, I didn't mean that. I meant, I just want Allah to pay him back for what he did. So here, what are you going to do? On the receiving end of this here. Now, if you learned what's here, then you're fine because you got some backup. You have some background knowledge in something like that. So then you'll say, okay, but it doesn't really mean that. So don't say that, okay? You be easy with that person and let him accept, okay. What if you didn't even hear this before? This case here, and then like that happened to you. Then now, you might judge the person as a kafir with no way out. If you heard someone say, may Allah be unjust to you as you have been unjust to me, and you have no knowledge of this paragraph here that we're studying, so you might tell him that's kufr and I don't care. Say your shahada or get out my face. Now, you're going to do that because that's what you understand from the language. You're right, that is a kufr statement, but you didn't see a way out for him. Why you didn't see a way out for him here? For something that's missing in your knowledge. Now, if someone had more knowledge of language, for example, and religion, and let's say he never took this paragraph, but just because he have more command of language, and then someone said, may Allah be unjust to you as you have been unjust to me, then this one, maybe he's studied some literature, maybe he's, he has more command of language, so he said, I perceive that this one thinks that this statement means something it doesn't mean. He thinks he's saying something that he's not saying. He doesn't think he's saying what he really is saying. I don't think this guy knows what he's saying. Do you know what you're saying, man? Do you know that the statement means that? No, I didn't mean that. That's what you said out your mouth. No, I didn't mean that. So then what you're going to do, you might need to ask, make sure if he gets out of blasphemy or not. Or you might have enough knowledge to say, all right, don't do that again. I'm saying all of this just to help you process scenarios of blasphemy when you encounter them. The one thing you should never, ever, ever be is confused about rules of blasphemy. The thing that makes this statement, makes the person think that this statement means, may Allah avenge me, is the wordplay here. How both sides of that sentence play against each other. May Allah be unjust to you as you have been unjust to me. That has in it some way of speech. Imagine somebody said, and this is just a simple example. Let's say you were annoyed with someone and you wanted to give him a piece of your mind. And that one was pleased with you and they love you and they want to talk to you and be happy with you. You are unhappy with that one and that one is happy with you. That one wants to have an enjoyable conversation with you and you want to scold that one. So you two have two conflicting intentions, two conflicting feelings. So then that one comes to you and says, I want to have a word with you. So what you might say, I want to have a word with you. So does it mean the same thing on both sides? No. It's just that you matched what he said for something you have in your heart. He said something to you, and for something you have in your heart, you matched what he said without meaning the same thing that he meant. So there's some precedent for that type of talk. If you're not strong in the language, you might not catch that. And then you might just deem him as a kafir. And you might have no room for him. That's from your own perspective. Still, though, remember that Shaykh Abdullah said, when it comes to explicit blasphemy, you don't have to rush. So, again, this statement is blasphemy. It is blasphemy for someone to say, the words themselves are blasphemy. For someone to say, may Allah be unjust to you as you have been unjust to me. Or may Allah mistreat you as you have mistreated me. But it's not far-fetched that a person thinks he could say something like that and not mean it, basically, because of the structure of the expression. So the speaker blasphemes because he attributed injustice to Allah the Exalted. However, if he understood from the meaning of, may he be unjust to you, may he avenge me, we do not charge him with blasphemy, but we forbid him from saying that. Question. So all classes of the blasphemy of saying depends on what the person truly understands from what he's saying. So, yeah, of course, what he understands, but it's not the strongest thing in the world to cling to, or it's not the strongest way to give a person an excuse. One might say, well, maybe he didn't understand. Maybe he didn't understand. Maybe he doesn't understand. Maybe he doesn't understand. And most of the time, he understands what he's saying most of the time, unless he's crazy. It's just going to be sometimes a person says something, and then you might be able to realize at the moment that he's talking that he doesn't know what he's saying. It's not like that's a major go-to. He doesn't know what he's saying. He doesn't know what he's saying. He never knows what he's saying. Inshallah, that's clear. He said, in regards to this question, you need to figure out what the person understands of what he said. Can you ask them, what did you mean by that? Because if they say blasphemy, didn't you then encourage them by asking what they meant? Okay. Well, asking him what he meant would only be blasphemy on your part if you're sure, if you're convinced that his answer is going to be more blasphemy, then you're not going to ask him that. But if you think that he's going to answer not with blasphemy, then you could ask him that. Or another alternative, instead of asking him, is to tell him. You might say, you mean such and such. And then when you do like that, in so many cases, he's gonna say, yes, yeah, that's what I meant. Say, don't, that's what you meant. Don't say it that way. That's kufr. And then they say, oh, yeah, you're right. طيب. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك